transgender movement is losing steam at a rapid race. Unlike the LGB, which will probably be around for a while, the transgender movement is losing steam very, very fast.
I'm sure I'm going to see some of you putting this up in the comments later on, and they're going, okay, here's the way this works. Alycia is this like sumo wrestler of apologetics.
My goal in every conversation is not to change a person's lifestyle. I don't find it helpful. I think my goal is always to help connect somebody to Jesus, and the Holy Spirit is much better at changing lifestyle than Alycia is. I do think Christians overall have a tendency to force Christian morality on non-Christians. And in a way that doesn't generally produce, it's not helpful, right? Jesus doesn't do this.
Hello everyone, Dennis Allen with the Disciple Dilemma. Let's talk about transgender identity, cultural pressures, and how disciples interact with a world becoming increasingly more familiar and in some ways entangled in the dilemma of transgenderism. Alycia Wood with Apologetics Inc. is with us today to talk about this. She's a thought leader and a speaker. She spends a lot of time interacting not only with parents who are facing the pressures of children who are interested in the transgender movement, but larger audiences, including people in the transgender communities. So we're going to talk about that. What do you expect from me as a disciple? Alycia is going to talk about it. How does an apologist interact? How should we interact? What's the difference between simply driving by and dumping our truth on people and actually building relationships? It's all in this podcast. Here we go with Alycia Wood, Apologetics Inc. Alycia Wood, thank you for joining us on the Disciple Dilemma.
Oh man, thank you so much for having me. It's just, I've never been able to chat with you about anything on your podcast yet. So it's great to be here for the first time.
Well, I'm thrilled about the work that you're doing, which I think originates kind of in the southeastern U.S. with a crowd we call Apologetics Inc. So how about giving us a couple of moments just so we can appease the bosses about what that is?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm with a great organization called Apologetics Inc. It was formerly the C.S. Lewis Society of Tampa, but there's a lot of C.S. Lewis societies out there, or C.S. Lewis institutes out there. There are different cities, and so we really, our original name was actually Apologetics Inc. So we actually just kind of went back to our original name. We were kind of doing business as C.S. Lewis Society for the last, 20, 30 years, whatever it was. So now and it's great. Apologizing. Our website's apologetics.org. So it lines up perfectly. It's super easy to find us. And what really our big focus is really helping Christians to really just be able to understand like where the culture's at, feel confident in their faith, despite all the various issues that are going on, the various challenges to the biblical faith, but also helping people in the culture that really are just thinking they don't even want to engage with Christianity to realize that there's something to it. And it's actually not just that it's true, but it's something that you actually want to be true. And so kind of helping those two worlds, which often seem at odds, to kind of maybe just be willing to embrace, maybe understand better the other side, and also maybe enter into it and if talking about a non-Christian. So with that said, we do articles on our website. We've got different podcasts. We speak all around everywhere, all around the world. And so that's what we do.
You guys sort of span the age spectrum. You run from children's programs and material all the way up to old folks like me, right?
Yeah, so we speak to any audience age. I mean, and that's, I think, important. And the questions are different. A lot of times people think, if you do kids, it must be easy. No, kids are actually hard, because kids actually ask you questions. You're like, I haven't thought about that in 30 years. Like, they ask some stuff that you're like, wow, that's a really question. So yeah, in terms of when we're speaking, we do any kind of age, any audience, Christians, non-Christians, former Christians, skeptics, whatever it might be, different religions. And then we do have some material actually for our teenagers and early college age called our 7x7 home discipleship youth program, which is really important. I mean, you have a whole podcast here focused on discipleship. And I think it's something that oftentimes we miss in the church. And, in terms of really growing people.
So to make this conversation, I think, really poignant, I'd like to think about there's an old line that a priest and a rabbi walk into a bar. Now, what I'm going to say is an apologist named Alycia
Okay.
and a trans walk into a pub and they sit down together because that's the only place at the pub that you can sit, and a conversation begins to strike up. How do
Yeah.
you think about a conversation with somebody who opens up with, hi, my name is Dennis and I go by they, and I identify as a woman while I'm wearing this, sport coat, or flip the paradigm. And who are you? How do you think about relating and interacting with people who don't identify the way you identify?
I think sometimes we psych ourselves out like, oh, there's somebody different. I need to figure out what the right way to talk. Well, not usually you don't. Usually they're just still your average person. They eat food like you do. They catch colds like you do. They get haircuts, like there's a sense in which a lot of it is the same. So I think one of the things that can be really helpful is, first of all, not to psych ourselves out, because that'll just make the conversation awkward. My goal in every conversation is not to change a person's lifestyle. I don't find it helpful. I think my goal is always to help connect somebody to Jesus, and the Holy Spirit is much better at changing lifestyle than Alycia is. So I would say that's the second thing. First thing, don't panic, freak out. Second thing is, you know, don't think that your job in that particular moment is to try and make somebody who's gay straight, or make somebody who is trans not trans. I think the third thing, should they say to me, well, you're Christian, and um, you know, this is who I am, and what do you think about that kind of thing? Then I could share with them for sure. I mean, if they ask, absolutely.
The transgender community can often become very sensitive to what they would call stereotyping, pigeonholing, appropriating, and that sort of thing. So for the folks who are listening today, one of the things that I think I'm hearing you bring up is it's really important to build an interactive relationship with them that's not necessarily based on a moral premise first, because they can't hear through a moral lens at first. If I start talking to them about doctrines of sin, doctrines of atonement, most people look at you with kind of a glazed over look, versus, if I'm hearing you right in this, Alycia, the idea is get the conversation going so that we can learn the story of this person that's sitting with us. Is that kind of the direction you're going in with this?
Focus on, how do I continue this conversation and keep it going even past the, priest and rabbi walk into a bar? Like, how can we even continue this as a friendship? The more I can understand about what a transgender person is dealing with and their struggles, that's going to help me better know how to engage in conversation with them. And that's, you're getting to know them.
So there's a group of people who are listening to this podcast, and I'm sure I'm going to see some of you putting this up in the comments later on, and they're going, okay, here's the way this works. Alycia is this like sumo wrestler of apologetics. Now, she doesn't look like a sumo wrestler, I can just tell you. She looks like a jock. But they're thinking, you've got the Apologetics Encyclopedia memorized. You know all these different worldviews and how they work. And I'm just a regular Joe or Jane walking down the street, getting along. I go to church, and now I've met this incredibly complex human being. You've got an unfair advantage, Alycia, because you can sit there and go, well, yeah, I can talk about X and Y and Z, and I can take you to the third level of the Uthman, and we can have a conversation about nirvana. But I'm a regular person, and I can't think that way. What's your advice for a follower of Christ who hasn't studied apologetics and doesn't stand up on stage and answer a lot of tough questions frequently, and is facing a really complicated person who's throwing some questions at them? What do I do now, Alycia? How do I interact and react with this human being?
So I think, believe it or not, I think Acts 17 can be really helpful here. In Acts 17, Paul goes to various places. He goes to Thessalonica, he talks to the Bereans, he goes to Athens, and each one of in Thessalonica and Berea, he takes a similar approach where he reasons with them from the scriptures to basically show who Jesus is. And he does that because they're Jews. And he uses the text that they understand to show that Jesus was the one that who the prophecies were talking about. When he goes to Athens, though, he doesn't use the Jewish scriptures. Why? Because they're not Jews. And he quotes from their poets. We are his offspring, in him we live and move and have our being, these kind of things. He takes a complete different approach, acknowledging all their many gods, this kind of thing. The reason why I say that can be helpful is because it shows that Paul knew his audience. He knew who he was talking to. He was aware of their beliefs, and he changed based off of who he was dealing with. And so I think you're right. There's a lot of people out there that are like, I don't even know what to do. So I would encourage somebody to learn. I mean, if you want to talk with somebody who is transgender, then you don't have to study every apologetics book on the sun. In fact, there's probably not going to be many on it. But you do want to learn and understand a bit about what's going on with them so you can better understand. So there's several really good resources out there. Abigail Schreier's Irreversible Damage is kind of the big book on this. She's not a Christian, which I think is very helpful, especially in this, because it's just demonstrating just an average journalist who is just like, something's wrong here. I also have a talk called I Think Therefore I'm Trans. And you could YouTube that, you can find it. I think they're foreign trans. Yeah. So you can find that on YouTube, and you can watch that. And also there's a very helpful video with Jordan Peterson and Chloe Cole. Chloe Cole is a what did transition. I think she started puberty blockers at 12 or 13, got a double mastectomy at 15 to be a boy, and then detransitioned at 17. So a very wild 3.5, 4 years of her life. And she shares her story about how things they didn't tell her and things that she didn't know. And so it's a great YouTube video between Jordan Peterson and Chloe Cole, and you'll understand a whole lot about what's going on if you watch that as well. So my point is, I'm not the average person. I don't know anything about this apologetic stuff. I'll tell you, I didn't know either. So I had to learn it. I had to study it, and I had to read a lot of stuff. And so I would encourage you, check out those three resources, and that'll give you a good enough feel for kind of what's going on. And then I would just really spend time praying to the Lord and say, Lord, if I meet somebody who's transgender, what is my angle? How do you want me to go about this? I hear what these people are saying, hear the information, knowing what I know, Lord, you know what I know, the library of scriptures that you've given me, of experiences you've given me. How now do you want me to communicate that? And see if the Lord brings somebody your way. That's chance. So I think for somebody who's saying like, I don't know, I get it. None of us know. We're not all born knowing this stuff. We all study it. And I would encourage somebody to do that.
I think a lot about the what I call the drive-by Christian experience, right? It's like, I just want to swing by, dump some truth on this person, have them kind of get their life together, and then I can get on back to whatever it was I was doing, the grocery store, or heading, out to the track to run or whatever. And so there tends to be, I think, I'm going to get you to react or respond to this. There tends to be in the Christian universe a significant desire to fix the moral perspective first, and then we'll talk about Jesus second. In other words, I need to fix the trans. I need to fix the atheist. Heck, I even need to fix the person who's going to the wrong church down the street because they're obviously in the wrong theology, right? Christians can get to be very siloed in this. My kind of request for you to respond to is, do you experience a lot of people who are seeking the moral fix ahead of the relationship to begin driving? Or do you sense that the Christian communities that you're running with have got this pretty well set and pretty well right?
I do think Christians overall have a tendency to force Christian morality on non-Christians. And in a way that doesn't generally produce, it's not helpful, right? Jesus doesn't do this, right? He doesn't tell us, let me tell you how you have to live and follow all of these rules and laws of the Old Testament, or follow all these things, and then you can come and bow your knee before my cross. No, he doesn't do that. And I think we as Christians have a tendency, because we recognize that they're harming themselves, whatever it is that they're doing. They're harming themselves, they're harming the culture, they're living ungodly lives. And so I understand the logic behind it. The problem is when you try and make people live like Christ before they like Christ, they end up never liking Christ, because it becomes about forced compulsion. It becomes he only cares about me for the things that I do, right? He only likes me if I do what he wants. That is Islam. That is Allah, where you've got to do a bunch of right things to be accepted. Christianity is a very different message. It is in your sinfulness and brokenness that Christ dies for us. That's what Romans 5:8 tells us. That Jesus dies for us while we were sinners, while we hated him, while we didn't like him. It's a completely different thing. And we cannot flip that on the script. We get that out of order. We can't flip it on its head. There's an intentionality behind this because the Lord knows that the best way to change somebody isn't by us. It isn't by us. He's got it. He's got it. And so I think that is, I think we made that colossal mistake with the LGBT, lesbian, gay, bi community in the 80s and 90s. And it didn't work, did it? Look at it now. So why would we do the same thing again? Why would we fall into that same trap again? And so, yeah, I really think that certain groups do have that tendency, and it's really done, I think, while meeting, right? You're hurting yourselves. Let me tell you the truth. Let me, save you from this thing that's going to happen to you. And I recognize all that. We just have to recognize that we're not all that effective, which is why the Bible says the Holy Spirit works in us both to will and to do for his good pleasure. We need God's help to be good. We need God's help to live as Christ wants us to live. One of the things that I'm thankful for in this whole transgender conversation is that the loudest voices are not the Christians. It's just, and I'm just thankful for that because it's one less. I mean, they the culture is already at war with Christianity, but it's just nice for once to not be the main warriors on this. And the reason being is because the transgender movement is losing steam at a rapid race. Unlike the LGB, which will probably be around for a while, the transgender movement is losing steam very, very fast. And
now that's going to be a big statement for a lot of people to hear. So we have a prophet who has said, I'm looking ahead. And it looks like, so this is a great conversation piece right here. Why do you say that, Alycia? Why do you think that the steam's coming out of the engine here?
Yeah, because I think number one, there are so many people, first of all, who are like, we cannot do this to children. They do not we are basically, you have to understand the steps are put puberty blockers on children at a very young age. When you go to your parents and say, look, I think I'll use me as an example. I'm a girl. So I'm a boy. I believe I'm a boy. I want my name to be changed. I want to be a boy. The parents freak out. I don't know what to do. They send you to a therapist. After one, maybe two, if you're lucky, visits, they're going to send you to endocrinologist who's going to put you on puberty blockers. Because basically all the therapist does is say, do you, tell me about what you're here for and you feel like you're a boy? Okay, well, here's your next step. They don't really look at any underlying issues, mental health issues, which are almost always there. Autism, ADHD, depression, anxiety, autogynephilia if you're an adult. I mean, there's all these kind of things that are usually there. They don't look at any of that as therapists or psychologists. They send you for puberty blockers, and that stops your puberty. And then after a certain period of time on that, you go on estrogen or testosterone. And then the next step would be surgery. So what we're finding is that these kids that go on puberty blockers at young age, there's all these side effects to puberty blockers. And, infertility is just one of the many different things, sexual dysfunction and all kind of issues. But we're finding is that what the kids at 11 or 12 don't understand is all of that stuff because they're 11 and 12 and 13. And so what's happening is they're now, after several years of going through puberty blockers and maybe estrogen or testosterone or whatever, now they're like 19, 20, 21, and they're realizing, oh my goodness, I'm not any better. Like, I still don't like myself. I'm still sad. I'm still upset. And I've completely destroyed my body. So the fact that we're not the forerunners on this, I think works for a massive advantage. Let's for once, be the place that somebody can come to find hope and love.
What I like about Alycia's conversation is it's interactive. The person with a diverse view is putting out their thoughts, their fears, their frustrations, and you can hear her kind of beginning to say, well, let's see if I understand this person. And then if I do understand this person, let me try to repeat back what you said and let's have this conversation, right?
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I like the direction you're going with this. I think for the sake of this podcast, one thing that you brought up when we were talking before the show was parents
Yeah.
and the great frustrations and fears they're facing in the world today. And what do I do, Alycia? What's your counsel for me when
Yeah.
my kids are starting to say, hey, I don't think I am who you think I am? What advice do you have for parents that are listening on this podcast about the great threat of the trans in their world?
This is such a good question, right? And so parents, I'm going to tell you that my answer is going to be probably difficult in the sense of your child probably won't like you. But I need you to be the parents in this situation because they will like you a whole lot more if you allow them to go through this stuff, only to be 20 and find out they're sterile or find out that they have all kind of medical issues that or their body's been changed that it can't be changed back. So let me just say this. If you're a parent who's a child struggling, um, oftentimes, like I said, there are usually mental health issues that precede any kind of child that is going through this. Transgenderism has been around for a while. It was usually male to female. Somewhere between 2 and 4, you got little boys acting like they're girls or feeling like they're girls. So Jazz Jennings, the popular TLC show, just Jazz, that's an example of it. The rise in young ladies is completely new, and is much more associated with the social contagion. So think maybe like what anorexia was in the 80s or 90s, and
Mm.
the ways that young girls deal with pain and associate with and yeah associate with each other, the way they deal with pain, the way they process pain. They tend to oftentimes mirror and take on other people's stuff. So it's, in other words, what we're finding is one girl comes out and says that she is trans. She's already got some sort of mental health issues. And she's trans because she's told on social media that that's why she's unhappy. And so but if she was a boy, she'd be happier. Her friends around her, when she tells her friends that she's gonna be a boy, her friends around her say, oh, okay, well, that must be why we're not happy with ourselves. And then they also transition. We're seeing like mass transitions of groups of girls, which is not common before this, and with transgenderism. And so with that said, understanding the influences of social media, understanding the influences of friendship groups, parents need to get their kids off of social media. They need to even change schools. If that is what needs to happen, they need to change their child's friends groups, change their schools if need be. And I'll tell you, transgender is not the only thing attacking our young adults. I mean, you'll see that young girls will now also have Tourette syndrome because they see people doing tics on TikTok. They'll have like tics with their heads. So now all of a sudden girls are picking up Tourette syndrome. Not that they really have it. They like psychologically think they have it. And so now they're doing tics. Or you'll see all kind of things. And this is young girls dealing with all of the changes and challenges they have of growing up. And along with all of the different mental health things that are there. So you need to change your friends groups, get them off social media, change your schools. I mean, I've read stories of, young girl says that she's trans, she's a boy. So mom says, great, I'm going to ship you off to grandma's house for 3 months in a horse farm. Goes out there, all of a sudden, she doesn't feel like she's a boy anymore. Right. I mean, it is that simple. Changing the environment is huge. So number 2, do not let your child be the adult decision maker. This is a time that you are going to have to fight for your child. Do not put them on any puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, any of this stuff. The damage is there. There's stories of 15-year-old girls having osteoporosis because of the drugs that they're on, because of the bone thinning and problems that these drugs cause. You have to understand that when they take these drugs, it's permanent. So many of the changes. Young girl takes testosterone, her voice changes after 2 to 3 months, 3 to 4 months. Her facial hair starts to grow, even a receding hairline, maybe even premature baldness. Like, you can stop taking testosterone, guys, and all of this stuff is still going to be there. It does not go away. And now this young girl is going to sound like a guy for the rest of her life. Like, do not put her on anything. They have long-term effects that are not reversible. And so I would say that be the adult, change up their environment, deal with their mental health issues, whatever it may be. And sometimes life is hard. Sometimes I think, there's another book coming out, another book. Abigail Schreier's latest book is on bad therapy. But her concern is that maybe we've gotten therapy wrong. Time Magazine came out with an article last year, Therapy Won't Save Us. And basically what they're realizing is that more people are getting therapy than before. We're on more medications than before. We've destigmatized therapy and mental illness, and yet more and more people are sick mentally. What's going on? And I wonder if, one of the things that Time Magazine raises, there is misdiagnoses. Sometimes life can just be sad. It doesn't mean you're depressed. It just means you're sad. And this particular season in life could just be a sad season. If you've gone through divorce and you're sad, that's normal. It doesn't mean that you're depressed. It doesn't mean you need to go on medications. Something very sad happened to you. And it's okay to be sad and cry and go through that. You lost a child, something like that. So keep all of those things in mind. And that would be the advice then that I would have for parents is you have to fight for your children.
So if folks want to creep your world, track down some resources, learn a little bit more about what's going on, where do we find you, Alycia?
Yeah, sure. You can go to apologetics.org and you'll see an article I wrote there on intersex, explaining what intersex is. Intersex are not people, both male and female. These are just biological conditions when something doesn't form what we would say typical in reproduction. And that's what intersex is. And so you can read that article there. You can find me on Twitter and Facebook. It's Alycia Wood 88. So the numbers 88. Both on, there's a public Facebook page and also Twitter. And feel free to invite me to come speak at any of the things that you're doing. I'd be happy to meet you and talk to you. And so, yeah, you'll kind of see me around in those kind of ways.
Where's your next public venue where folks wanted to come see and listen? Where would they go?
Well, that's a good question. So I'll be at Kingdom Bound, which is it's a music festival up near Buffalo, New York, at a Six Flags, Six Flags Darien Lake. So I'll be there this year. So that is a very public venue because it's a music festival, goes several days. And so if anybody's in the upstate New York area or even Canada, Toronto, Ohio, Pennsylvania, come see it, come to Kingdom Bound. I don't know what my top topics are yet, but last year I did speak on transgenderism. I might do that again this year. So we'll have to see. But yeah, I think that's the next one. That's in July. Yeah.
And the last ambush question for you is favorite movie in mind recently. What's your favorite movie lately in mind? And you're not going to say Barbie. I know that.
Oh,
although I like Barbie. I actually thought Barbie was kind of an interesting movie. It was, I was forced at gunpoint by my daughter to watch it with her.
Okay, fine. Then you're okay. You're in the clear. My problem is I went and saw Barbie and Oppenheimer on $4 movie day, like National Movie Day, where movies like $4. So I was like, I'm only going to spend $4 on Barbie.
That was a long day.
That was it was a long day. So I went from Barbie to Oppenheimer. So I guess I would say Oppenheimer was very good. I had to turn my eyes away. For those of you who haven't seen it, certain parts, I think certain parts were just not appropriate, but did turn my eyes away at certain parts, which I'm used to doing at this point. It is 2024 and you have to do that in all kind of TV shows and things. But I think that was a brilliant movie in so many ways. So I think that would, but keep in mind, I really don't see movies very often. I don't. So that's like my one time a year that I'll go see a movie. But yeah.
Wow. Alycia Wood, Apologetics Inc. Thanks for joining us today on The Disciple Dilemma.
Thank you, Dennis, for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you all for listening.
Would you help the church think more about discipleship? Would you help us get the conversation started to talk about the biblical discipleship Jesus gave us? Please follow us. Our website, www.thediscipledilemma.com. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and all the RSS feeds. If you'd follow or like us, you'll help us get leverage in the digital marketplace to talk about the fact that discipleship needs to be talked about. And as always, folks, thanks for listening.